Well, the next time we see a ball kicked in a World Cup, it will be 2026 on North American soil. And while there's so many things to talk about before then, the question I want to ask first is which teams from 2022 will we see qualify for the 2026 World Cup? Guys, Matty G back here with you on Football with Flags. Thanks so much for joining us. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. Let's get right into this. All right, guys, we'll try and keep things pretty tidy in this video as we'll go over each individual group. And then as you can see on the right-hand side, a little scale to show you how confident or hesitant we are with each team in terms of whether or not they'll qualify for 2026. We'll get started off with the Dutch, who again had a great run to the quarterfinals, just phenomenal comeback against Argentina before ultimately falling short. Again, I think this team has a bright future considering where they were in 2016, missing the 2018 World Cup, and then even having a disappointing finish in the Euros back in 2021. Certainly feel like this team should take care of qualifying and make it to the World Cup in 2026. As for Senegal, they're pretty close up there as well. I definitely think Togo and Democratic Republic of Congo will be their toughest tests in their qualifying group for 2026. But again, this is one of the younger sides that we saw in 2022. Hopefully Sadio Mane will be fully healthy and fit next time around for the World Cup if they do make it, and certainly for qualifying as well. And hopefully they don't face any other injuries also. As for Ecuador, we've kind of got them middle of the road. And the biggest reason why is while this team was the fourth youngest side that we saw back in November, the question is Inter Valencia still going to be around here in 3 years' time? Where else are they going to find goals in terms of this team? Again, I think they have a lot of really good potential talent coming up. But one thing to keep in mind is while CONMEBOL, when they start qualifying for 2026, Ecuador will actually start with -3 points for falsifying information about one of their players in the previous cycle. So they're already below the curve in terms of everyone else in CONMEBOL once that qualifying process starts. And as for our host, Qatar, a really disappointing run back in November, only scoring 1 goal. And again, the Asian qualifying this time around for the AFC is a gauntlet. It's got 5 different rounds. You can qualify potentially in the 3rd round, also in the 4th round, and then in the 5th round is ultimately a spot to maybe go to an intercontinental playoff. So I think Qatar still has a decent chance, but to be totally honest, considering some inconsistency with their roster as well as how they performed in this most recent Gold Cup, and I know that, again, that wasn't their best team that they brought out, but still this team's a little bit in limbo for me in terms of what we're going to see for qualifying with a shot to potentially go back to their 2nd straight World Cup. All right, on to Group B, where you can see the United States, of course, already one of the co-hosts. They have already qualified. Again, the main focus, I think, for these guys is obviously turning around and seeing how well they can perform in Copa America coming up here in 2024, as well as the Gold Cup following up that year as well, and just seeing what this side can do. Again, they were the 2nd youngest side in the World Cup back in November. A lot of upside, but again, can they stay healthy? Can they continue to improve as a unit and go possibly for maybe the best run that they've ever had here as co-hosts in 3 years? As for England, really don't have any worries about them at all. This team only gave up 3 goals in qualifying in the last cycle. Again, I really felt like that this team should make at least a quarterfinal run in 2026, if not potentially better. Again, obviously we have an extra knockout round, but I really feel like considering the depth that this English side can have and the potential resources that they have to go to make another deep run in this competition, and certainly just control qualifying as well, shouldn't be an issue at all. As for Iran, they're down a little bit there, but still feel fairly confident that they should qualify. Again, this was the oldest team that we saw in 2022. However, they've qualified for the last 3 tournaments. And again, I definitely feel like that this side still, considering while the AFC qualifying is difficult, Iran should be able to hopefully make it through in that 3rd round comfortably to get to 2026. As for Wales, not really feeling all that confident in this side. Again, I know that they have a fairly young team. They've got some guys coming up, but considering this was just their 2nd appearance since 1958, the fact that Gareth Bale has retired as well, along with some other players who are getting up there in age, I think there's a lot of uncertainty surrounding this team. They're also fourth in their European qualifying group as well. And considering the recent success that they've had in that competition, if they don't even qualify for that, that certainly doesn't bode well in terms of looking forward the next 2 years for World Cup qualifying. So, not 100% confident in Wales right now that we'll see them in 2026, despite adding the extra 3 teams that we'll see directly go from Europe. Now on to Group C, as we'll start off with Mexico. Again, one of our co-hosts already qualified for the tournament. Certainly got to be feeling better after their win in the Gold Cup, getting their 9th Gold Cup title. But again, I still feel like there's a lot surrounding this team in terms of uncertainty, especially the roster and just what type of team we'll see here in 3 years' time. They were the second oldest side that we saw in Qatar. And don't forget, again, they haven't won a knockout stage game since 1986. Of course, now we've got an added round with a round of 32 into our knockout stages, so it's not necessarily the round of 16 potentially that could still bite them, but the round of 32 making its first ever presence. As for Argentina, obviously our defending World Cup champs, I really don't feel like that there's any reason to doubt that they'll make it. They were 15 points clear of the cutoff line in World Cup qualifying last time round. Certainly looking to defend their title. I think one of the biggest questions is how many of these guys that we saw in 22 will be back in 2026. They were the 3rd oldest side, I believe, that we saw in Qatar. As for Poland, down there a little bit farther, kind of middle of the road, not 100% sure about this team possibly coming back. We'll see how Lewandowski is in 3 years' time, how much of an impact he'll still have at that moment. But if he isn't around, or if he isn't as impactful as, Milik, Grosicki, who else on this side is going to be able to step up and score goals, considering obviously there's a huge difference between the amount of goals he scored for his country compared to most of his other teammates. As for Saudi Arabia, though, I've got them a bit higher. Again, they had a historic win over Argentina, the only side to wind up beating that group in this previous competition. Again, however, though, they did lose Renard, their manager, who went to the French women's national team. But I feel like, considering the jump that Saudi is trying to make with their pro league over there, and just trying to have a better overall talent group and pool of players, especially considering most of their national team guys play in that league as well. I think that this team still has a lot of potential moving forward, and I feel fairly confident that they should get through qualifying to see them in 2026. Now featuring Group D, where we'll start off with Les Bleus. Again, I really don't have any concerns about them qualifying. The main things for me to watch out for is obviously them staying healthy and really having no internal issues in my mind. I think those are 2 really important factors to keep a focus on, especially through qualifying and going forward. Because again, we know how much loaded talent that this federation has. It's just a matter of picking the right guys and putting them in a position to be successful going forward for Didier Deschamps. But as for the Socceroos in Australia, certainly a bright side for this team going forward, in my opinion. They qualified for the knockout stages for just the 2nd time ever before getting knocked out by Argentina back in November. We could possibly see this team host maybe in 2034 potentially. So again, while we saw what a fantastic tournament the women put on here recently, the thing to keep in mind for Australia going forward is if they really want to host in 2034, this is a pivotal decade to really, help themselves in development to try and get to a position to be wildly successful down the road. So obviously you want to try and qualify for 2026 and 2030 and really start to make a name for yourself to get to that point. But we'll have to wait and see for Australia. As for Tunisia, they had the 5th oldest side that we saw in 2022. Really, I think that their biggest test will be against Equatorial Guinea in qualifying, but still feel pretty confident that that team should qualify for 2026 on the African side. Remember, they did beat France in the group stage. However, again, it was France's last game, but really take no credit away from them, considering even they saw a different side that they competed against. It was still a great game for them and a fantastic result for them in terms of their history. As for Denmark, got them a little bit lower down They have qualified for 3 of the last 4, but a disappointing 2022 campaign. Again, me, along with a lot of other people, thought that this could be a potential dark horse in this competition, considering the recent success they had in the Euros, and to come in, certainly at least qualify for the knockout stages and see what this team could do in some one-off games, but really, really disappointing. And not only that, but they're currently third in their European qualifying group with a tight battle between Finland, Kazakhstan, and Slovenia. As for Group E, feeling pretty confident with at least 3 of these sides. And we'll get started off with Spain, who just won the Nations League this past summer, their first trophy since 2012. The third youngest side that we saw in Qatar. They had some really great results. Obviously, this group was back and forth, so much drama and intensity all the way down to the last second to see which 2 teams qualified. But definitely feel like Spain, considering the young talent that they have, could certainly play a potential powerhouse coming back once again, maybe with the Euros next summer, or at least certainly in 2026 with maybe a deep run in that competition. As for Germany, maybe it's time for another DOS reboot. We'll have to wait and see. Obviously, we know this team is hosting the Euros next summer, but they still have plenty of talent. Really don't feel any concern in terms of them qualifying. They absolutely dominated qualifying last time out for the 2022 cycle. The next question is, can we see how well they do here in the Euros next summer? And can they finally get over that group stage exit hump that they've now been defeated to twice, both in 2018 and last time out here in 2022? As for Japan, the team I feel like in terms of Asian qualifying, I feel the most confident to get through. They've qualified every single time since '98. Lots of talent, a lot of guys in their mid-20s right now. And I definitely feel like this group has a lot of great potential, such a good technical side, really fun to watch in a lot of different areas. The question for them, though, is once they get back, hopefully in 2026, can they get over that hump of that first knockout stage game? We've seen a couple of really disappointing finishes. Obviously, the comeback that Belgium had on them in 2018, and then losing out to Croatia in penalties here back in November. As for Costa Rica, they're down a little bit farther. Still feel fairly confident they could qualify, but this team has had a bit of a disappointing run recently. Obviously, didn't finish as well as they would have liked in the Gold Cup this past summer. Again, conceding some goals when I really didn't feel like they should have. Of course, we saw what a tough result they had against Spain, but they really bounced back against Germany and Japan and played incredibly well. This side has been to 3 straight World Cups. But the thing that concerns me the most is while, again, CONCACAF have also had their numbers boosted in terms of direct qualifying spots, with our 3 co-hosts already taking 3 of those 6 positions, that means there's only 3 direct spots left. Now, again, there's 2 potential playoff positions as well that Costa Rica could find themselves into, and we've seen them get through and qualify for a World Cup through the playoff system before. But still, I think this Costa Rican side, with some aging veterans who have either retired or certainly close to doing so, you know, the phenomenal run we saw in 2014, they've got to find some pieces to regroup and maybe find that magic once again if they want to at least qualify for 2026. Group F, one of the best groups we saw in the finals back in November. We'll start off with our last co-host, Canada, again, who hopefully are looking to make a better run than what they did back in 2022. Obviously, just the second time that they had ever qualified. Really felt comfortable and confident about this team that they had, but unfortunately just ran up against 3 really solid teams. Again, Canada, however, of course, facing funding issues, other problems with resources, etc. I'm not going to go into all of that, but again, I still feel like that this Canadian side is really talented, especially attacking wise going forward. And hopefully that the Federation and those around them will help support them in that regard to get them to a better place than what they are currently. Of course, having a trophyless summer this past summer is disappointing as well. I think they felt pretty confident to at least maybe get the CONCACAF Nations League or possibly win the Gold Cup. They did neither of those things, but hopefully for Canada, they'll take advantage of the next couple summers to be ready for 2026. As for Croatia, obviously disappointing to lose, of course, in the semis to Argentina. They followed that up with another disappointing loss to Spain here this past summer in the Nations League final. Still looking for that trophy for Modric and some of these older guys. Again, we've seen just some phenomenal runs by Croatia in recent years between 2018 and especially this past, these last 2 World Cups. But again, the question is, will Modric still be even around? What will this team look like with some of these other guys aging out as well? Again, I still feel confident that Croatia will find a way to qualify. This team knows how to, win games in a multitude of ways. So I definitely don't feel too worried that they won't be able to qualify. As for Morocco, don't really see any issues with them either. Obviously, we saw the best run by an African nation ever all the way to the semis before losing out to France. Certainly feel confident that this group should qualify. I think Zambia will be their toughest test. But if they're able to get over that hump, they should be fine with the rest of the way. Belgium, though, they are a little bit farther down for me. Again, they're in a tough spot with their qualifying group for the Euros next summer. They are currently trailing Austria and in a bit of a battle with Sweden as well. A tough group there. Obviously, we're seeing, just like Croatia, some of this golden generation phasing out. And one concern for me is the discrepancy in terms of the number of caps between the guys that have been here for quite a while and those that are just starting out or pretty fresh to the federation. So we'll have to see how Belgium does. I still feel like they'll qualify, but they might go through a few more difficult times than people are expecting. Next to last group, and we'll get started off with Brazil, who had absolutely no issues last time out during qualifying for 2022. They went 14-3-0, didn't lose a single game, 21 points above the cut line there in the CONMEBOL standings. And again, with Carlo Ancelotti coming over sometime next year, as well as, don't forget, Brazil have won a World Cup on North American soil already before. So certainly excited, I think, for them to get back to that point. I don't see any issues and look for them to make a deep run. As for Switzerland, looking pretty good in European qualifying at the moment. They've got a pretty solid lead. Don't forget the great win that they had against France a couple years ago in the Euros as well, in the round of 16 in that penalty shootout to advance. Again, this team has always had some really good players. A dark horse, in my opinion, in some tournaments. Remember how well they did in 2014. Also, this side, for me, definitely a team that I'm not really too concerned about in terms of qualifying. I know they've got some older pieces, some guys that are starting to phase out. Part of, in my opinion, what I thought was a golden generation, but they've looked pretty solid with some of their up and comers in the last few major competitions, or at least some guys that we've seen take on some more responsibility. They've qualified 5 straight times, and I don't see that streak breaking this time round. As for Serbia, they've qualified 4 out of the last 5. Haven't made any knockouts since 1998. But again, keep in mind, this team did beat out Portugal in their qualifying group back for the 2022 World Cup to get the direct bid and force Portugal into a playoff. So definitely don't feel too concerned about Serbia being able to make another opportunity to directly qualify or potentially go through a playoff if need be. As for Cameroon, they are a bit farther down, but I still feel pretty confident that this side should make it to 2026. They've got a decent group in terms of qualifying there with Cape Verde, Libya, Angola. I think that group overall is just a bit tougher. I still feel like Cameroon should come out on top. But again, don't forget the great win they had against Brazil to end the group stage despite getting knocked out with the Boubacar's fantastic goal there. Again, this team has a lot of great attacking talent. I think they need to tidy some things up in the back, but certainly still feel like we should see Cameroon in 2026 in North America. Last but not least, Group H, which again was a fantastic group to watch unfold back in November. We'll get started off with Uruguay, who have made 4 straight appearances. Slightly declined a little bit in terms of some of the results they've had in previous tournaments. Of course, they made it to the quarterfinals in 2018, beating Portugal, remember, in the round of 16, but to not even get out of the group stage this time, certainly disappointing. They've got some key pieces that are starting to age out as well. But keep in mind, this U20 side for Uruguay did just wind up winning the World Cup back in Argentina earlier this year. So a team, I think, that's certainly on the rise in terms of some really good talent coming forward to the senior team. So keep your eye out on Uruguay. They were just 4 points above the cut line during the CONMEBOL qualifying process last time out. But again, with 6 direct spots this time around, I don't see any issue that Uruguay doesn't qualify once again. As for Portugal, they're cruising through European qualifying at the moment. Big question is, of course, how long does Roberto Martinez keep Ronaldo around in terms of, will we see him next summer? Will we see him in a couple of years? Who knows when his time finally comes to an end with the Portuguese national team, but still feel like that this team's in some good hands with the players that they have currently on the roster and coming up as well. As for South Korea, again, we talked about the gauntlet that is Asian qualifying this time around with the different levels and rounds that you'll see, but I still feel confident that South Korea gets through. Made their first round of 16 appearance this last time out since 2010. They've been to 5 straight finals. And again, we saw what a great run this team made in '02 when they were the co-hosts all the way to a semifinal. I feel like that they're certainly excited to maybe come here to North America and put on a big show in terms of what they could do in 3 years' time. And I really feel confident that this South Korean team will make it back for a 6th straight appearance. And then, of course, Ghana. They are a bit farther down. I really love this team. I love watching them, even though they've broken my heart several times previously, of course, being an American. But watching Ghana play in a World Cup is just awesome always. Again, this team was the youngest team that we saw in 2022. They did miss out in 2018, which was certainly disappointing, but I feel like that this team has kind of started to rebuild and are looking pretty good, in my opinion. They're going to have a tough group with Mali and Madagascar in that qualifying group to get through. But still feel like that Ghana could potentially make it. So that's why we've got them there at kind of around fairly confident, not without a doubt, but still feeling like this team could certainly make it to 2026. That'll be it for today, guys. But thanks again so much for watching. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. And please let us know down in the comments as well, teams that you think we will see in 2026, as well as those that we might not see here in 3 years' time. But guys, make sure you stick around. We've got plenty more content coming your way, including World Cup qualifying, Euros, Copa America, the Olympics, so much more to cover, and we're going to get to all of it as much as possible. So make sure you stick around. And until next time, guys, have a blessed day. See you soon.